So then we will start as usual, normal, trying to quiet your mind by keeping your awareness on the breath and watching, observing it. Then we can try to generate a good intention by thinking, reflecting, contemplating, when things does not go in certain way in our life, the way we wish, a lot of the time or most of the time, we feel like it's the external factors that are the cause of our unhappiness. The problem, the difficult. But if we look deeply, the cause of our unhappiness is not the outside external factor, situation, the event, the person. Mainly because our own state of mind. Because our mind interprets things differently. Because our mind is unable to accept the new reality. Because our mind is not peace and our mind is disturbed. That is the main cause why we're so unhappy. With the same situation, with the same someone's behavior, actions, if we look with a different state of mind, more positively, we might not be so unhappy and disturbed as we are. And despite those external changes, adversity situations, challenging situations, still we can find peace and happiness in our life. Therefore, it becomes more and more clear as we look deeper and deeper the need to work with our own mind, so crucial. So that by working with our mind, that we reach a point where your mind is so strong like a mountain that cannot be moved by the storms, extreme heat, winds, and so forth, to be able to keep your mind calm all the time, peaceful all the time. And to reach that kind of point, state of mind, we need to practice, meditate continuously. And for that, we have to be reminded of the practices all the time. And that is why we are here. So we are reminded, and the need to work with our own mind and continue to work with our own mind, where we find more stability in our mind, more peace, more calm, more loving kindness, more compassionate state of mind, more wisdom, more patience, more sense of contentment, and so forth, which all are source of our inner peace and happiness, as well as source of happiness for others. A cause to be more beneficial to others. As well as the method, the path, cause and condition to achieve our spiritual highest potential, the fully awakened state. And may our act of coming here together with a good intention, listening to the talk, engage in discussions, reflecting, contemplating on the meaning of those teachings, all of that may become a cause and condition to obtain our own highest potential, fully enlightened state. The most enlightened, the most complete and perfect state, so that we can be greatest benefit to all sentient beings as well as oneself. Okay.
Page 73, the first verse once. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakti clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Page 75, the second verse. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, and all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. To these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. And the short mandala offering, some prayer books, it might be on the bottom of 97 or the top of 98. Sajipati Chonshin Meto Tare Ravin Nin Tengen Panditi Sangye Shinrum Mide Uwai Dokun Nam Tashinwa Shivashto Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kandi Ayami. Refuge in bodhicitta, once in English, twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I am enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodan Sogi Chonam La Chanju Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chonengi Besonangi Drala Pencher Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chodan Sogi Chonam La Chanju Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chonengi Besonangi Drala Pencher Sangye Druparsho. Kanje dujani sone tawa tangja tangbe te tambe shone tenje be godam de la cha cha. So we have been going through the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, and the Bodhisattva way of life or path is to live compassionate, kind life in the service of others. That is the Bodhisattva's practice life. And in order to be to live compassionate
kind, and to be in service of others, we need a lot of courage. We need a lot of strength. We need a lot of patience. Without patience, if we become impatient, then we can easily get frustrated. And when we get easily frustrated, that could lead to easily kind of being upset. And that could have a effect in our love, compassion, the Bodhisattva attitude. And that would also affect being beneficial and help and service to others. And so, in order to continue to be help, service, loving kindness, compassion, we need all, patience. It's important qualities, whether to be service to others or whether being service to yourself, benefit to yourself. The need of inner strength, courage is important. And in order to have such inner strength, inner courage, and patience, we have to learn and train our mind to look things positive way, trying to always training to look light in the darkness. If we don't learn and train our mind to see the light in the darkness, then the only thing you see is dark, even though there is light in that darkness. Because we are not train our mind to see that, so even it's there, you cannot see it. Just like many things. A lot of things in our life, we are not aware of those because we don't pay enough attention. It's not there, it's there, but because we not pay attention, so you don't see it. And it reminds me a story of, I don't know, I guess maybe in Europe, I was in one of museum, historical museum, and in that, there was about, I think when Spanish came and, or it could be in Mexico, I'm not sure now, I'm kind of confused now. And there are paintings of ships coming, board ships. And then they were explaining, when the first ship came, the people didn't recognize. It was in front of them, but something they were not aware of it before. So it is in front of them, but they didn't notice it in a way. So, that is another good example. A lot of things are in front of us, but we are not aware of that. And so therefore, training our mind to be more aware and to see things in that way, then you can see the light in those darkness. To be able to see and be aware of the opportunity in all those difficult situations. If you see with that awareness, if you train that, you will always see some opportunity, opening of new things in all those adversary situations, difficult situations. You see something, you can see, and there is something positive. Even it is in many areas, from many angles, it is negative, but at the same time, you can also see there is a positive side in there. And when you see that, then it will help you to be more, positive, give you more strength, so that we don't become so negative, so discouraged. And that is all the mind training. The lojongs are that. It's all about training to do that, you know. And of course, this is part of lojong practice too. And again, the concept or the story of this, you know, half glass and full glass, and it's all that, you know. A lot of time in our life every day, we focus too much on not being full, instead of seeing there's half, there's something there, you know. Instead of appreciating that you have, it's not full, but there is half that you can drink, that there is something you can drink, something you can eat, but our mind is so focused on not being full that we always feel something missing, unhappy, all the time, regardless of whatever. We have always something to complain, always something to be dissatisfied, always something to be unhappy. Because our minds are always kind of looking and focusing on that, instead of training to see the other side, focusing, not being full, instead of focusing on that there is half, there is something. And that is why we are so unhappy. And that is also at the very beginning, I said in the motivations, you know, it's all in our mind. All in our mind. Someone might be living in the most beautiful place in the world, most peaceful, most beautiful, most progressive, or more kind, but when their mind is disturbed, they will be complaining about that place all the time. For them, they want to get out of that place as soon as possible. They don't see positiveness, goodness in that, because their mind is always so unhappy and complaining of something, and then that kind of blind your mind to see the positive, the goodness, the beauty of the place, the kindness of the people, all the positive side there, and all you focus is one or two negative things you see, and the whole being for you look like negative, all that. You know, it's so interesting how our mind create our own world. You know, we think the world is there, out there, but actually our individual world, how we see the world and how we relate with the world, is all in your mind. You create your own world. We all have different image, different ideas of the world, and how we feel about that, how we relate with that. And that is all our own mind creations. You know, I often sometimes see people, meet people in the process of talkings, you know. Sometimes I feel people who says, you know, they would rather not to interact with human beings. It's so sad. You know, the image of human beings is cruel, mean, unkind, all of that. Difficulties, problems. They would rather just be by themselves with a dog or cat or pet, close with the rest of the human beings. Human beings are not as bad. There are bad human beings and good human beings. There are extremely kind, compassionate, caring, loving human beings, bodhisattvas. But of course, there are also some unkind human beings as well. Just because of that, you focus so much that now to you, every human being feel like that person. Every human beings appear to you, to your mind, as that person whom have very difficult situation, very difficult relationship, whatever, and now everything's appear and is your creation, your mind. Not every human being is like that. This is another good example of how our mind create that kind of world in our own mind. And when you focus so much, then slowly, not one person, then more and more person, and slowly all human beings started to appear and look like that. And of course, your life is going to be miserable. You cannot trust anyone. So again, the point I'm trying to make, which whenever we start, I always try to make some point before we go to the main subjects, is to understand how our unhappiness, how our miserable is created by our own mind. Important to really realize that one. Until that, again, we always point outside all the time. For our dissatisfied, for our dissatisfaction, for our unhappiness, we always point outside. Instead of looking inside and then trying to change our mind, trying to change, and thereby, by changing our attitude, by changing our perceptions, by changing our mind, thereby changing the outlook of the world and outside. And through that, then your relationship with the world, then positive, better. Because your outlook is better. And your outlook is better because of your positive perceptions. And because of that, then you will always have better relationship. You will not be so unhappy and so miserable, then the world can be very miserable or not so miserable. And it is all in our mind. Depending on our state of mind, living this world you can feel extremely miserable. Or we can feel, it's not so bad, it's not so miserable. And it all comes from your state of mind. All come from your mind. So I think it's important to recognize and to remind it that all the time. I think when we talk about here now, maybe we all kind of more or less say that sounds reasonable. Seems there's some truth in that. But once we're out of here, something happened and then immediately, it's nothing to do with my mind, it's there. Moment then our mind is disturbed, something happened, unhappy, and then, my cause of my unhappiness is that one. And so And then we kind of forget to work with our own mind, and then which we have been doing for a long time and continue to do that. So I think we are in verse number 34. Abandoning saying harsh words. Harsh words disturb others' mind and cause the behavior of conqueror child to deteriorate. Therefore, it is the practice of conqueror children to abandon the harsh words that are unpleasant to others. So, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the Bodhisattva way of life or Bodhisattva practice is to be kind, compassionate, loving, caring, benefiting and helping others, not to hurt and harm others. To hurt and harm others is opposite of Bodhisattva's attitude, opposite of Bodhisattva way of life, is opposite of Bodhisattva practice, is opposite of Bodhisattva path. So when you engage in such behavior, attitude, speech, then with someone who is aspiring to become bodhisattvas, they deteriorate that. And if you are already bodhisattvas, your bodhisattvas behavior, action, practice, the path deteriorate. And so therefore, we should be very mindful, careful how we use our word. And instead of using harsh words, we always try to be mindful. One, be mindful of how the harsh words can hurt and harm others and affect others. The effect of that, the consequences, negative consequences that could have on others, as well as yourself. It's not only others, also yourself. The impact of such, sometimes the word can be, harsh word can be much more worse in terms of negative impact on someone than physical violent act. In some cases, in certain cases, in certain situations, in certain individuals, the harsh words might be much more painful, hurtful, traumatized, more than the physical violence. Sometimes we might not think that way. We think of physical violence. Of course, generally speaking, physical violence is much more harmful. But, in certain individuals, in certain cases, your word of harsh word can be much more worse than that. And recognizing, being aware, mindful of that, and careful how we use our words, our speech is important. The power of the speech. And I think now, we see more and more of that. The power of the speech, whether you use negatively or positively, how it impacts the whole society, the whole world. Whether you stir up, kind of shake the dirt stir up everything, people's emotions, everyone's, or bring more kind of calm, peaceful through speech. And you see that happening around the world now, a lot of time with the speech, how people are so disturbed and upset and angry and all of that due to certain individuals' speech. And so therefore, with that understanding, recognition, then we always try to be as much mindfulness as possible how we use the speech. Instead of harsh, we try to use more kind, gentle, compassionate speech in communicating, While we can disagree on many issues, and to be able to express those differences, different view, there's nothing problem with that. But when we use the speech, more kind, more gentle speech, instead of using more kind of disrespectful speech, instead of using more harsh speech, instead of using more unkind speech. And so also our speech, like everything, the mind and our speech, the mind and our physical behavior, they are very much related. Our mind can affect, our state of mind can affect our speech and our physical behavior. In the same way, our speech can affect our state of mind. Our physical behavior can also affect our state of mind. And so therefore, because there is so much relationship, interconnected with our three doors, body, speech, and mind, and how each of those, any of those actions affecting the others. And so, so that is, again, recognizing, understanding that is important as well. When we talk about harsh speech, in Dharma point of view, it is a speech that is motivated by one of those negative emotions, negative feelings. Especially, motivated by ill will feeling, motivated by kind of the wish or mind to hurt, harm. Motivated that, then we might use whatever speech. The speech can be the truth, or you are saying something truthful or something not truth. That doesn't matter. Or the way you say it can be very, very, what you call loud. When we get angry, where you become very loud, what you call, your voice raises, or whether you say it very softly, it doesn't matter. You might say very softly, or you might raise your speech, but if you have the intention to hurt and harm someone, and then you use whatever speech, truth, untruth, truthful, untruthful, raising or soft, still is harsh speech. On the other hand, when your speech is coming from the state of mind of loving kindness, compassion, care, kindness, sense of concern, all of that, then again, whether your speech is raised or whether your speech is soft, still it is not a harsh word. But of course, so, and that is one thing kind of, so the intentions come important, like in all the Buddhist practice, the Buddhas explain all the practice, whether it's verbal, whether it's mental, whether it's physical, the intention motivation always come role of the motivation intentions. The motivating factors is always comes in factors and important factors and importance of that. So here also in terms of harsh speech is not just the speech itself, but from what state of mind that the speech comes from is the crucial and important part. And even with your best intention coming from your compassionate state of mind, and you use certain speech, whatever way that you might use it. And if someone misinterpret it, misunderstand it, they get hurt, that is their problem, And that can happen anytime, because if my mind is disturbed, I can interpret everything, anything. Even someone is trying to be very nice and kind, compassionate, trying to care, my mind can interpret very negatively and I can feel hurt without any smallest intention of that person trying to hurt and harm you, but actually trying to help and benefit you and trying to be very kind in terms of their physical expression, in terms of their speech, in terms of their mind. Still, when my mind is disturbed, I could interpret all of them negative way. All of them negative way. And by my mind interpreting that negative way, I will feel hurt by that. So some cases, is hard. So the point here is where intentionally, with the intention, motivation to hurt and harm, not doing that, important. And of course, the more wisdom we have, on top of the compassion, attitude, kind, caring attitude, on top of that, the more wisdom we have, the more skillful meaning we have, the more we are able to use our speech where it hurts others less. And so that is what we try to do, we cannot be overwhelmed by, as long as we try our best with the right intentions. I think that is the key. Despite our trying best and with a good intention, still if someone feels hurt, someone interprets differently, we shouldn't be so overwhelmed by that, Otherwise you will be overwhelmed your whole life. Because we will be meeting people all the time who are unhappy. And when you are unhappy, they are going to interpret everything differently. Your mind is going to interpret everything differently. And not others, we do that ourselves, it's clear. We do ourselves that all the time. When our mind is not in good state, we interpret things differently. So trying to avoid any speech, with the right intention that could hurt others, that could harm others, that could make others unhappy, that could disturb someone's mind. So we try to avoid all those speech that could make them lose courage, that could lose their confidence and so forth, whatever all those speech we try to avoid, we try to abandon as much as possible. Again, as I said, it's all trying with our right intentions and trying with whatever wisdom, skillful means we have to do that. Apart from that, sometimes if something else result comes, then there's not much we can do about it. Maybe sometime we can learn from that, not to repeat that in the future. In some cases, through that experiences, we learn that. And then trying to engage in the speech, with the right intentions, trying to be more gentle, more kind, more compassionate speech, more encouraging, more giving more confidence. And also using those speech is a practice of the Bodhisattvas in order to help, in order to benefit, in order to help them to get out of those negative emotions, negative state of mind, and helping them to be more positive, more virtuous, more kind, giving them more encouragement and so forth in their, especially towards the virtues, towards the positive way of life, towards positive. So that is the Bodhisattva's practice that we try to engage into. Then next verses 35. Training in a way to abandon afflictions. If one familiarizes with the afflictions, they become difficult to ward off by means of their antidotes. Therefore, having seized the weapons of antidotes by generating mindfulness and introspections to destroy the afflictions such as attachment and so forth, immediately upon their first being produced is the practice of conqueror children. So here it is saying, whenever any afflictive emotions or delusions and defilements, whatever different vocabulary we use, translation we use, whether it's a destructive emotions, afflictive emotions, defilement, delusions, or klasha, in Tibetan Nyamo, whenever any of those arises, those state of mind, such as, the three poisonous mind, attachments, anger, and ignorance, or other negative emotions, such as sense of, unhealthy pride or arrogance, jealousies, greediness, miserliness, resentful, grudges, all those different negative emotions that arises from one of those three root delusions, that whenever any of those negative emotion arises, immediately being aware of that through the practice of mindfulness introspections. The moment one of those negative emotion arises, immediately recognizing, being aware of that. The moment you are aware, mindfulness, recognize that, immediately trying to apply antidote, whatever practice, meditations, antidote that you are familiar with, that you have learned, trying to apply immediately without any delay to overcome that negative emotions, that defilements. So here, and engage in such practice in countering those negative emotions without giving them any space and time, and immediately trying to confront them without any delay, is the practice of Bodhisattvas. And as he said, if you kind of delay in applying the antidotes, if you give more space and time to the delusions, then in the future it becomes very difficult to overcome them. Just like even in our physical, habits, when you recognize you are engaging in some negative habits, you have to try to change it immediately. Because if you don't do that and you are so used to that, then later, even it's unhealthy, even you want to change it, it becomes very difficult because of habitual pattern of that over the years. Then it becomes very difficult to change such behavior, such habits. Sometimes we know, we have certain habits that we know that we are not proud about, and we know there are certain habits you would like to change it. You know there are certain habits you would not like to repeat it because it is creating problem for others and yourself. And despite we know that, and despite we try to overcome it, it's not easy because it has been so habits over the days, weeks, months, and years. The more we have been doing that, the more longer, the more difficult it is. But at the very beginning, we say, oh, this habit is not a positive. This habit is not a healthy. This is harmful. Immediately, if you try to change it, it's easy. It's easy to kind of change your unhealthy behavior because it hasn't become so ingrained, embedded in your that kind of habits. And same with the mind, not only in physical behavior and habits, same with our mental behavior and mental habits. And so, and the essence of all the Buddha's teachings, all come down to that. The essence of all the Buddha's teachings come down to confronting, eliminating, overcoming all those defilements, those negative emotions. That is the whole Buddha's teachings. It's all about that. Even though there are many different forms of practice within the different traditions, even within the same traditions, there are many aspects of the practices, different form of practices, but the goal is same. Whatever different form of practice you are using it, all should be directed towards reducing and eliminating those defilements, those delusions. as we recite at the very beginning in the praise to Buddha Shakyamuni, do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only the perfect virtuous action thoroughly. Subdue your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. That was actually the words of Buddha himself from one of the sutras. So again, that is Buddha's teachings. Buddha's practice is to subdue your mind. What does subdue your mind means? Subdue your mind means reducing and overcoming those negative emotions, those defilements, those delusions that are the cause of suffering of individual, suffering for the family, to the society, to the world, to all planet. We can point out many different cause and conditions for our suffering problem on individual level, on the global levels, this and that. But if you go deeper, it all comes from one of those negative emotions. Nothing more than that. Our sentient beings' greediness, anger, hatred, ignorance, all these destructions that is happening on individual level to bigger global level, all coming from one of those state of mind. Until we deal with that, problems are going to come again and again and again. Since human civilizations, same problem, similar problem has been repeating again and again and again. And we have tried to change externally with different constitutions, with different legals, with different, policies, all of that, but we keep on repeating, doing the same thing again and again and again. Why? Because the greediness, the anger, the ignorance are still there. As long as there is the ignorance, the greediness, the hatred is going to repeat again, no matter what you do. Of course, maybe, we can postpone, we can reduce to certain level of effect of those things by changing externally certain things, but it's not going to the problem is not going to go forever just by that, as long as those delusions are there. And so therefore, Buddha totally understood that with his own experience, enlightenment. And that is where his focus is, working with our mind to subdue your mind, those delusions. If we are able to, if all the sentient beings that live in this world, all the human beings in this world, or in particular country, in particular society, in particular family, if we all work with our mind, and if we don't have greediness, if we don't have the anger, if we don't hatred, if we don't have ignorance, we don't need all these papers, legals, law. Those are not required. But when we have all this delusion, even with all this law, with all this legal, with all these papers, still we create a lot of pain, suffering, problems. And so therefore, and even when in that prayer that we recite, do not commit non-virtues and perform all the perfect virtues. And that, how do that comes when we subdue our mind. When our mind is subdued, when we have less delusions, you create less non-virtuous actions. You create more virtuous actions. That is effect of your mind, of your attitude. And so therefore, so these teachings, these words really come to the Buddha's, the essence of Buddha's teachings, kind of in a way summarizing it. So as it is mentioned in this verse, in our practice, in dealing with those negative emotions, delusions, afflicting emotions, the importance of having a strong mindfulness and introspection mind. These two are the tools, very important tools in reducing and overcoming the defilements, the delusions. If you have a strong mindfulness, so again, the mindfulness sometimes can be used very vaguely, sometimes more precise. In terms of when you are more precise with that, it's a state of mind, and it is a mind that the mind that apprehend the object of whatever you are object, and not losing the object, not forgetting the object, that mind. But of course, in general, we talk about being mindful or being aware of whatever is happening, whether in your physical sensation, expressions, your speech, your mind, and it is important because whereas introspection mind, or sometimes it in Tibetan is sheshin, but sometimes it's translated as alertness, sometimes vigilant, introspection, whatever, different translation term that different translator might use it. It is a state of mind, mental factors, that kind of examine, analysis, like watching. Whereas mindful is more focused, aware. And so those two might have different functionings of that, but they go together in hand in hand. And it's important, a lot of time, one of those negative emotion, delusions, arises due to many causes and conditions. It arises. Not only it arises, then it, over the time, sometimes in very short periods, sometimes it takes longer, it intensifies, becomes stronger. And sometimes it becomes so strong and intensify that then it explodes, in a very negative way. And we are not aware of all this process that is happening there. Not mindful and aware there. Delusion arises, let's say, anger or resentment that has arises. We are not even aware of that. And then not only it arises, now we are creating story around that, and then that intensify. The anger, the resentment started to intensify, become stronger and stronger. And because our mind is creating a lot of story around there. Again, we are not even aware of that. Our mind is doing all this story. We are not aware that it is getting stronger, intensified. And then it reaches a point where it will just explode and burst into a very unhealthy, negative way, verbally, physically, emotionally. And then we do things, and then later We recognize what we have done. We feel bad about it. What did I do? So we have kind of messed up in a way which you are not. Later, you feel embarrassed sometimes, guilty, all different emotions that could regret. Maybe you might even feel, kind of negative about yourself, your behavior, your actions. Sometimes that can even lead to self-hatred. All of that comes. And our mindful awareness came what we have done much more later, after everything is kind of exploded, and then we're aware what we did and what we shouldn't be doing, or which we didn't want to do and which we have done it. But if that mindfulness had come earlier, maybe we might have stopped doing that. Whatever resentful anger is there, and you are ready to say something very harsh word, you are ready to kind of physically express something, and then you recognize that, oh, that is not healthy, it's not beneficial, it's harmful. So even though anger is there, but you didn't go further expressing that in a negative way, and didn't hurt others so much and yourself in that way, because you are aware there, and then through that awareness, mindfulness, you know that is not healthy, and so you take a certain action to not proceed beyond that. If your mindfulness awareness is more stronger, you might have been even aware very early stages when the anger or resentment is starting to build up, and where it hasn't reached a very intensify. It is there, but it is still very subtle and very not strong, weak. And when you are in that, if you try any practice meditation, you can kind of let it go and kind of not intensify it. Easy to apply antidote and overcome it, because it is very weak. The stronger it becomes, the more difficult it becomes. Even when you try to apply meditations, antidote, your practice meditation antidote is weak and your negative emotion too strong. It's like trying to extinguish big fire with a bucket of water. Your anger is like the big fire, and your practice is weak, like a bucket of water. You are unable to extinguish it. Instead, maybe it might make more fire. That water might kind of make the fire bigger. And sometimes when our practice is so weak and our negative emotion is so strong, you try to practice, and then it is not having some impact that you want to have, and then you start to get more frustrations. Do you get it? I shouldn't be angry, and now I'm trying this practice, and now it's not really reducing, and then you start to become even more angry, more frustrated. Frustrated with maybe more frustration, maybe with yourself, with your practice, maybe with the teaching itself, the practice itself, maybe it doesn't make sense, and all this can arise. Just like that, the water, instead of extinguishing, is kind of even clearing that, and because of. But if you have recognized the fire was just beginning, you don't even need 1 bucket of water, you just need 1 cup of water. the sooner we are able to recognize, the more easier is to apply the antidote. The easier is to overcome those delusions, those defilements. And as your practice with introspection, mindfulness increases, gets stronger, better, and your awareness, then you can even be aware, even before delusion arises, when the sudden cause and condition are coming together. And you know that, through your own physical sensation, when you have that sensation, you know, oh, that lead to that feelings. You know, even with your sensation or even with certain other cause and conditions. And so then it becomes even more easier. The delusion, even then it doesn't give even rise to the delusion to arise. You take certain actions before even delusion arises. It is like, you see the wind blowing, you see the candle here, you see the grass here, the fire hasn't started, and you say, okay, let me put away those grasses somewhere else because the wind can blow it and make the fire. The fire hasn't started. It doesn't have to start it, but you recognize, see the cause and conditions. The grass is near, the candle is nearby, the wind is blowing. And so you just either take off the candle or move somewhere else or move the grass somewhere else, and that without fire to start. If you are not aware of that stages, then fire starts. But still, if you are aware immediately when the fire started, the grass, probably with small water, you can kind of extinguish that. And so that is the example, in dealing with that. And so here, that is why, again, as he says, the weapons of using the weapons of mindfulness introspections as a way to destroy, being aware of your enemy, internal enemy of those afflicted emotions, those delusions, those afflicted emotions, the internal enemy is like the spy is keeping eye on your enemy all the time. What the enemy is doing, so that before they do anything, you take them down. The better you have that, better intelligence, spy you have, the more easier it is to take your enemy down. Because you see, and so therefore same, not only also in dealing with our internal enemy, that is the same. So mindfulness introspections is like the spy, and the sooner you recognize their behavior, how they act and coming together and all of that, the better it is to, easy to take them down, easy to diminish through the others weapons of, whatever antidotes, meditations, technique that we might apply, It can be, mindfulness meditation. It could be, analytical meditation. It could be some of the Vajrayana techniques. Also, whatever different technique that meditation, there are so many different technique meditation, which whatever you are familiarized with, whichever you know those practice, whichever you feel strong about that, and so apply that, and then overcome the defile, reduce and overcome the defilement, and therefore in Shantideva's chapter 4 and 5, he explained details or more extensive on mindfulness introspections, and in terms of dealing with the afflictive emotion, then he explained very detailed on chapter 7, So you, in a way, you can say this is kind of summarize the contents of Shantideva's chapter 4, 5, and 7 in some way, One of the Katamba master, I think many of you have heard about his stories. Geshe Begungel, and he has interesting stories about how he compact or encountered the delusions through his practice. There are many stories, but maybe I just share one story. And some of you have heard before. He used to be a very fearful robber, and bandit. People were scared of him and his gangs, because they were robbing the houses night, day, and later part, he regretted, and he wanted to join the monasteries. He joined the monastery, became a monk, and but he has a lot of old habits we just spoke about. Okay. He went to the monastery because he was not happy with his habits, his behavior and his habit, to change that. But also he found it was not easy, And one of the instant, he was invited by a family to do some prayers at home, and he was there, and of course he was in the the room where they have the altar, the meditation rooms to say, and then the family was outside, and then he saw there kind of sack of bags of tea, tea leaves. That is what in Tibet they used to make a tea leaf. You break it and that. And immediately his hand went inside because he was so used to stealing, robber and that. Immediately he went because he wanted to take some, So baby, each time when I go, you have to check my bag. Maybe someone have to wait there and check my pockets. So he put his hand into the bag to put the tea, Immediately, that was his impulsive kind of reactions. He's so used to that. Immediately his hand, and then with his mindfulness, immediately he recognized that I'm stealing, which I'm not supposed to do. Immediately his mindfulness catch it that he was stealing. But he was very courageous, unlike like us. Probably I noticed that, then I will just put it and not steal it. But in his cases, he was extremely courageous. Then he put his hand, one hand in the bag with the tea, another hand, he shouted, "There is a thief in the house." There is a thief in the house. And the owners came running inside and say, "Where is the thief? Where is the thief? You don't see." And said, "Look, this hand, here's the thief." And there are many stories how he deal with that, how he applied the teachings. And again, the mindfulness helped him to recognize he was stealing, and through that he applied antidote to overcome that. And so there are many other similar stories of him doing different things. I don't want to go all of that. And so I'm saying because I was just trying to use one of his quotations or his statements in relation to that. And there is one, where he says, I have only one job, or I have only one thing to do. And that is to guard my mind, at the door of my mind, with the spears of mindfulness introspections. He said, like, I have only one job, only one thing to do, and that is to guard the door of my mind with the spears of the weapons or spears of mindfulness introspection. If the delusions intensify or be more active, I will be more alert and active. If the delusions subside and relax, I will also relax. So in a way, he said his job is that not allowing the delusion to take over you. When delusion is more active, he's going to be more active, more alert, apply more. And when delusions are not so active, then he can relax. And so that is one of the that he said, and that is how he applied himself in his practice. Eventually, he became a very highly realized beings, and great teachers and examples of from where he went, from what state to another state. And in terms of applying the antidotes towards the delusions, as I mentioned before, another Katamba master, Domtemba, he was a lay practitioner, and he was the one actually who started Katamba traditions. And he was the main disciple of Atisha. And he said, if our practice, whatever form of practice, it doesn't matter. As I mentioned, there are many different forms of practice, meditations. Whatever practice you engage into, if it becomes an antidote to delusions, then it's Dharma. Whatever form of practice you are doing, if it doesn't become antidote to delusions, it's not a Dharma. Very clearly made. Whether we are meditating, whatever form of meditations, different form of meditation that we, or whatever form of different practice that we engage, if it increase our delusions, it is not Dharma. It doesn't matter. Even you meditate 2 hours every day, single pointedly, concentrated very deeply. If it doesn't act as an antidote to your delusions, still is not Dharma. But when your practice started to have some effect on your one of the, even not all the delusion, but one of the delusion to be less. Even it doesn't mean the delusion will go immediately, It can have many different effect or impact on different levels. Sometime, before we have a very strong, let's say, anger, easy, strong anger. And now slowly, we still have anger, but it's not as strong as it used to be. That is having some impact on our practice. The anger hasn't gone away at this point, but it is not as intense as it used to be. And so that is a positive result, having some impact. Before, maybe anger lasts for a long time. Now it doesn't last for a long time. It goes quickly. That is positive impact of practice. I'm just giving one example in relation to one delusion, but it could be any of the delusions, any of the afflicting emotions, And before it takes time to let it go, now you can easily let it go, even though it arises, but you can easily let it go. And so forth. Before you get very frequently angry, now you don't get as frequently as anger. You still get angry, but not as frequent as it used to be. Before, even small things make you angry, very upset, frustrating. But now it doesn't. Still you get frustrated, angry, all of that, but not so frequent at least, and with even slightest small things. And those are some of the effect, how it is having some positive impact in your practice, delusion. And I wanted to kind of say that and give those examples because sometime, we have been practicing, meditating for many years, and our anger is still there, and we think maybe it is not having any impact. Maybe I'm not making any progress because the anger is still there, but then that is where we have to check, Anger might still be there, but it's not as frequent as it used to be before you practice. Angry might be there, but it's not as intense as it used to be. Angry might be there, but you are able to let it go sooner. So all these are, sometimes we have to see that to give some courage, confidence, and that otherwise and recently, someone was driving and we were talking about, and someone mentioned, he feels he hasn't made much progress since, when you look back, seems like has not made much progress or not much change. And then I was asking some questions, Before you met the Dharma, have you thought about all sentient beings? And he said, no. Now, do you think about all sentient beings? He said, yes. That is some progress. Before, you don't think about all sentient beings. Now you started, your attitude has changed about all sentient beings. You think about all sentient beings. Every morning when you try to have motivations, you dedicate for all sentient beings, well-being of all sentient beings, instead of just myself. That is progress. What was your attitude about the animal, insect before? Did you have any kind of sense of those are sentient beings? And sense of life in that way? He said, no. Do you have different perspective now? Do you recognize that? Yes. So like that, as we were discussing, so then you begin to see how much sometimes we are not aware of those changes. But a lot of your attitude has changes. Perception about so many things has changes in a positive way. And even though it is not easy to be a kind, compassionate all the time, and even though sometimes we can be very frustrated, angry, and even have a bad feeling, negative feeling towards certain individuals, but in generally, we have the strong wish to cultivate loving kindness, compassion, wanting to be more compassionate, more kind. Generally, we have that. Before you met Dharma, probably you don't have so much love for a lot of people. They don't have that, even that concept of thinking of that, that we should be more compassionate, more kind, more caring. Whether you are able to do or not, just to have that ideas that it's something that you inspire, something you want to develop, something you want to. And so, those things, I kind of wanted to it kind of reminded me, that's what happens, my mind go here and there, while and something comes and in the process of that. And so, and I wanted to share that because I often sometimes hear a student being kind of discouraged because they feel they haven't made much progress or hardly any progress, any changes. But as I'm saying with that, as I put those cautions, then he began to understand, oh, yeah, my attitude has changed. My perception has changed. And all of that. And so you begin to see changes and in subtle way, in that way, At the moment you have taken granted, that was how it almost like you already, from your birth, you know about all sentient beings. But that wasn't the case, because that is now we all think about it, pray about it. So it seems like it has always been there, but that wasn't the case. And so I was coming to that because of that I was saying about the Dom Demba's comments that if any practice become an antidote to the delusion, then it is Dharma, and if it doesn't become a antidote to delusion, then it's not Dharma. And then so in terms of that, that's where it came from. And again, mindfulness, introspection is important to, as we went through some other verses as well, to constantly checking our minds. Of course, our three doors, our physical behavior, our words or speech, and our mental attitude and mental state all the time, especially our mental state all the time. And whenever we notice one of those delusions arising and trying to apply whatever tools, method, meditation we might have to apply immediately without kind of delaying or giving the space. And in order to have a better understanding of that, then we need to study, scripturally and then experientially. First, you learn from scriptures, and then you observe your own different, when we have those emotions, observe them, and then, identifying them, saying, oh, this is resentful mind. Oh, this is anger. Oh, this is greediness. Oh, this is attachment. Oh, this is ignorance. To be able to identify those different negative emotions, and then to be able to understand what are the impact of that negative emotions on your physical level, on emotional level. What are the impact of that on yourself to others? And through that, and how does that delusion arises? Those different negative emotions arises. What are the cause and conditions that give rise to those negative emotions? So understanding that, first we learn from scriptures, such as, there are studies in Buddhist mind and mental factors. They describe about many of those negative emotion details, Lorik, and mind and mental factors. And then it's not just learning from scriptures. Then once you have learned scripture, now with your own experience, observing, watching, and then understanding that each of those different emotions, and then to be able to identify and to be able to understand each of them, and effect of them, and all, it becomes helpful to really understand in all the teaching when they explain about how those afflictive emotion delusion are so destructive, um, so harmful, and all when they talk about all this disadvantage, the defect, the fault of those, um, when you are able to understand with your own experience through your own observations of those yourself, then you have strong certainty of those teachings, unshakable, unmovable certainty with that. And then you understand how, when the teaching says these are the true enemy, these internal afflictive emotion are the true enemy and the real enemy, not the outside, those inner, then we begin to see that, how, recognize how they are true enemy and how it only bring pain, suffering, destruction, harm. And through that understanding with your own experience, then we will try to apply, then we will put more effort in trying to apply whatever teaching, meditation, practice to reduce and to overcome them. Otherwise, we hear all the time, we see all the time, the delusion are the main enemy, but still, we still think the external enemy is the main enemy. This is not the main enemy. We still doesn't have that strong feeling. These delusions are the real enemy. Always something happens, then we always kind of feel the external are the main enemy and not the internal. And so because we don't have that deep, profound understanding of that experientially, our understanding is still very kind of superficial, just dry understanding, superficial understanding, and which is better than not having that understanding, but still it doesn't go deep enough and profound enough. And I think so. So I think that is where we kind of live here today.